Snow clung to her lashes like tiny shards of glass, melting into cold streaks against skin that already felt raw from the wind. Her knees had sunk into the freezing mud, and the chill was biting up through her bones, but she didn't move. Couldn't move. The world around her was silent except for the sound of his voice, deep, sharp, each word laced with finality. It wasn't a shout. It didn't need to be. Every syllable landed like a knife in her chest, carving out something she thought would never be touched. His mark burned on her skin, alive with an agony that didn't just live in the flesh, it was inside her, like fire had been poured straight into her soul. And yet, even as the pain rose, something colder seeped through, the truth. This was happening. This was real. The pack stood behind him, their eyes like stones in the dim winter light. No one stepped forward. No one whispered in her defense. They just watched, silent witnesses to the moment her world came apart. The air between them felt too thin, too sharp, like breathing would cut her from the inside. She didn't remember when her hands had curled into fists, nails biting into her palms hard enough to draw blood. Her wolf stirred, restless and furious, pressing against the edges of her control, but her human heart was breaking in slow motion. The sound of his breathing carried through the space between them, steady, detached. He didn't look angry. Anger would have been easier to understand. This was worse. He looked like someone speaking to a stranger he'd already decided he didn't care to know. And then the words came, the ones that broke her. Final. Sharp. Heavy with authority. Words that meant there was no way back, no way to fix what had already been shattered. Her body swayed forward, an instinctive urge to reach for him, to grab onto anything familiar, anything safe, but her wolf froze her in place. Her wolf knew before she did that there would be no mercy here. The mark on her shoulder, the one that had burned warm with promise, flickered under her skin. Faintly gold at first, then shifting. The shimmer dulled, dimmed, turned silver in slow, cruel waves. It was the death of the bond. And she could feel every heartbeat of it fading. Her breath left her in a shudder. She wanted to scream, to beg, to demand an explanation, but the weight of the eyes on her was suffocating. Pride, or maybe sheer survival, pinned her tongue. Her wolf's low, feral growl rumbled in her chest, but no one else seemed to hear it. And that was the moment she realized she was already alone here. The cold deepened. Her toes were numb in the slush beneath her, the wind slicing at her bare arms like it wanted to strip her down to bone. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs felt rooted in place, trapped between wanting to fight and knowing the fight was over. When her gaze lifted, she caught his eyes for the last time. They were as cold as the snow beneath her, as still as ice on a frozen river. There was nothing there for her anymore. The next breath she took was sharp and shallow. And then she moved. Her knees scraped against the mud as she pushed herself up, not caring about the grit biting into her skin. Her wolf surged forward, urging her to get out of the circle of their judgment, out from under his shadow. She turned and ran, each step a messy lurch through the slush until the tree leaves swallowed her. The forest was darker than she expected, the snow-laden branches clawing at her clothes as if they meant to hold her back. Her breath puffed in the air, visible even in the gloom, and every heartbeat pounded in her ears like a war drum. Shame burned hotter than the cold. It wrapped around her throat, made the air harder to take in. It wasn't just the rejection. It was the way it had been done, out in the open, with everyone watching, with no chance to hide the way her chest caved under the weight of it. Her wolf paced inside her, restless, unwilling to lie down and take it. This wasn't surrender, her wolf hissed in her mind. This was retreat. For now. She leapt over a fallen log, landing in powdery snow that rose up in a sharp spray around her legs. Her breath came ragged, her lungs burning from the cold and the effort, but still she ran. Each step deeper into the woods was another mile between her and the humiliation still steaming in the air behind her. Somewhere far back, the wind shifted. She froze mid-stride. Her wolf's ears pricked. A sound cut through the night. Not his howl. Not the sound she'd grown to know like her own heartbeat. This was deeper. Rougher. carrying something ancient in it, something that made her pulse stutter. The tone rolled through the trees like it had weight, like it could press down on the snow itself. Her wolf stopped pacing. She stood completely still, muscles locked. That sound wasn't meant to be ignored. It wasn't just a wolf announcing its presence, it was a wolf calling to something. Calling to her. And in that frozen breath, standing in the dark while the trees closed in and her mark still burned silver on her skin, she understood one thing. Her night wasn't over. It had only just begun. The howl lingered in the cold air long after it ended, sinking into her bones in a way that made her skin prickle. It wasn't just sound, it was a pull, deep and instinctive, like a thread winding itself around her ribs and tugging her forward. Her wolf leaned into it, ears forward, every muscle poised. The forest around her seemed to shift in its wake, the creak of the branches, the crunch of settling snow, the distant ripple of wind. She knew this place wasn't safe. She knew the line she was crossing, or maybe she'd already crossed it without realizing. The Northern Pack's territory was a place her own had spoken of only in quiet tones, a map marked with warnings she hadn't understood as a child. Wolves here were said to be wild, dangerous in a way that wasn't about size or teeth, but about the way they didn't play by anyone's rules but their own. But that howl, it didn't sound like a threat. Not exactly. It sounded like something that knew her name, even if it hadn't spoken it. The snow deepened as she moved forward, crunching under her bare feet, the icy powder biting into her skin with every step. The moonlight broke in sharp shards through the tangled branches overhead, throwing her shadow across the uneven ground. She kept her breathing quiet, not from fear, or maybe a little from fear, but because every sound she made felt like it might drown out the forest's secrets. Somewhere ahead, the air shifted. Her wolf caught it first, a scent so sharp and sudden it rooted her to the spot. It wasn't her mate's scent. It wasn't anything she recognized. It was darker, richer, threaded with something almost electric. The kind of scent that made her mouth go dry and her heart pick up a beat it hadn't known it could. She inhaled again, deeper this time. Cedar. Smoke. Something else she couldn't name, wild and burning all at once. Her wolf's response was instant, ears forward, tail high, a low hum of approval vibrating through her chest. The logical part of her screamed to turn back. This wasn't her fight anymore, she'd already lost hers. But her feet kept moving, crunch after crunch through the snow, her pulse quickening in time with each step. The forest thinned slightly ahead, opening into a small clearing where moonlight pooled pale and cold. Her breath caught. Shadows moved at the edge of it, not one, but several. Too many to be anything but trouble. Rogues. Her wolf bristled, claws pricking just under the skin of her fingertips. The rogue's scent hit her next, sour, unwashed, threaded with blood. Their eyes glinted in the dark, low bodies shifting closer in a slow, deliberate ring. They'd been waiting. One stepped forward, a hulking figure with a patchy winter coat and scars crossing his muzzle. His growl was low, vibrating through the frozen ground. Her wolf snarled in response, but there was no mistaking the disadvantage. They were circling, their paws light, their teeth catching moonlight in quick flashes. She backed up a step, only to feel another body move behind her. The breath against her neck was hot and rancid, making her stomach turn. Her wolf pressed against her skin, ready to fight, ready to draw blood, but they were too many. The first rogue lunged. She turned sharply, catching the glint of teeth, the blur of fur, but before the blow landed, the air split. A second howl, closer this time, so close it rattled in her bones. The rogues hesitated, just for a heartbeat. And then the trees at the far edge of the clearing exploded. A black wolf burst through like a shadow-given form, massive and fast, silver eyes locking on the nearest rogue with a focus that was nothing short of lethal. He hit the first one mid-leap, the sound of impact cracking through the cold air. Snow sprayed up around them, the white instantly stained with streaks of red. The other rogues scattered, but not far enough. The black wolf moved like he'd been born for this exact moment, precise, unstoppable. Every movement was brutal efficiency, no wasted motion, no hesitation. His teeth found throats, his claws tore through fur and flesh. She stood frozen, watching him work through the circle, her breath shallow, her pulse loud in her ears. The silver of his eyes flashed between each strike, catching the moonlight in a way that didn't seem possible. They weren't just bright, they glowed, cold and burning all at once, searing the image into her mind. One rogue tried to run. He didn't get far. When the last body hit the snow, the clearing was quiet again except for the sharp sound of her own breathing. The black wolf stood over the final rogue, chest heaving, fur slicked dark with blood. His gaze lifted to her. For one suspended moment, they simply stared at each other. Her wolf pushed forward inside her, unblinking, unafraid. Those silver eyes held her there, rooted her more firmly than any threat could have. And then her knees buckled. The cold, the fear, the rush of adrenaline, it all crashed in at once, and the world tilted. The last thing she saw was those silver eyes still locked on her as the snow rose up to meet her. She woke to warmth. It was disorienting. After the biting cold of the forest, the air here felt almost heavy with heat. She was lying on something soft, furs piled high around her, the faint scent of smoke and pine curling through the space. When she tried to move, a sharp ache ran through her muscles. Her head felt heavy, the room around her swimming slightly until her vision adjusted. The walls were rough-hewn wood, the firelight throwing shadows that swayed with the flames. And then she realized she wasn't alone. Wolves. Not in their human skins, full wolves, their bodies relaxed, but their eyes tracking her every movement. They were larger than she was used to seeing, their coats thick and their gazes sharp with something she couldn't read. She swallowed hard, her wolf pacing inside her chest, restless but not afraid. Not yet. And then the space at the far end of the room shifted. He stepped into view, tall enough that the firelight caught the edge of his shoulders first. His presence filled the room before his voice did, though he hadn't spoken a word yet. His hair was dark, his stance one of quiet authority, but it was his eyes that rooted her to the bed. Silver. The same silver she'd seen in the clearing, cutting through the chaos like a blade. He didn't move toward her right away. He didn't need to. The air between them seemed to pull tight, her wolf leaning forward inside her as if drawn toward him. And in that moment, one thought slid through her mind with sharp clarity. This was the alpha of the northern pack. And she was in his den. The firelight shifted as he stepped closer, and the wolves flanking the walls didn't move, didn't so much as flick their ears. They didn't need to. Their silence told her everything about him. This wasn't just any wolf who'd pulled her from the rogues. This was their alpha, the one she'd heard whispered about in her pack's war stories. The one they'd painted as a monster who killed trespassers without hesitation, who ruled through fear and blood. And now, she was in his den. Her wolf stood alert inside her, but it wasn't fear that rose in her chest. Not exactly. Fear came with the urge to run, to shrink back, to make yourself small. This was different. Her pulse was too quick, too heavy in her throat. The air felt hotter near him, like the space between them was charged, humming just under the surface. He didn't sit. He didn't need to match her level to speak. When he did, his voice was low, deep, and threaded with something that felt like command and danger all at once. He didn't ask her name. He didn't ask what she was doing in his territory. "You're under my protection now." The words hit her harder than any threat could have. She didn't understand them. He didn't even know her, not really, and yet the tone left no room for argument. It wasn't an offer. It wasn't a request. It was a fact. Her wolf bristled, uneasy not from what he'd said, but from what it meant. Protection under an alpha like him wasn't just shelter. It was claim. A choice you didn't make yourself. He stepped past the fire, the shadows breaking across his face. The silver in his eyes caught the flicker of light and held it, making it impossible to look away. And then the scent hit her full, unshielded. Cedar. Smoke. That same wildfire thread she'd caught in the forest, only stronger now. Her wolf surged forward so sharply she had to grip the fur blanket beneath her to keep her hands from shaking. Every instinct told her to keep her breathing steady, to not let him know what that scent was doing to her. But her wolf didn't care about control. Her wolf recognized something dangerous and wanted more of it. He turned his head slightly, speaking to one of the wolves at his side, not in words she could understand, but in a low growl and a glance. The wolf left without hesitation, leaving her alone with him and the others who still hadn't blinked since she woke. She couldn't stop herself from asking why. Her voice felt small in the heat of the room, but it still broke the air between them. He didn't answer right away. He studied her, not like he was looking at her face, but like he was looking through it, weighing something deeper. "You crossed my border," he said finally. "By law, I could have torn your throat out before your first breath hit my ground." But his gaze dropped to her shoulder. "That mark tells me you've already been torn apart." Her chest tightened. She wanted to hide it, to pull the blanket higher, but his eyes didn't waver. The silver in them didn't soften. If anything, it sharpened. He moved past her again, toward the far corner of the room, speaking to no one in particular. "The blood oath is mine to give. She lives here now. No one touches her." Her wolf stilled. The blood oath wasn't a phrase tossed lightly in the shifter world. It was ancient, binding, stronger than any treaty or alliance. It meant her life was his responsibility, that any threat against her was a direct challenge to him. And in return, it meant she belonged to his protection until he decided otherwise. She didn't miss the irony. Hours ago, she'd belonged to someone else's protection. And he'd thrown her into the snow without hesitation. One of the wolves by the door shifted, not into human form, but enough to move closer and murmur something low into the alpha's ear. She caught only fragments: her name, the name of her pack, and the name she least wanted to hear. Her fated mates. Her stomach dropped, cold replacing the warmth of the fire. The alpha's eyes slid back to her, unreadable. He dismissed the messenger with a flick of his hand, but she'd already heard enough to know the conversation wasn't over. Her wolf leaned forward again, alert, pressing for answers. He didn't give them. Not yet. Instead, he came closer than he had before, standing just at the edge of the bed. Her breath caught again, not because she thought he'd hurt her, but because the air between them shifted, thickened. That scent, cedar, smoke, wildfire, wrapped around her like it was meant to. Her wolf's hunger sharpened. It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just curiosity. It was recognition of something primal. Something that didn't care about the rules of bonds or the politics of packs. "Rest," he said finally, the command smooth but absolute. "You'll need your strength." She should have asked why. She should have demanded to know what he'd been told, what her fated mate's name was doing in his mouth. But the weight of exhaustion pressed down harder than her questions, and her body betrayed her, sinking deeper into the furs. The last thing she saw before her eyes closed was him turning toward the fire again, his back to her, his voice low as he spoke to another wolf. She caught just enough to freeze her blood. "Her mate has declared her rogue." Her eyes snapped open, but she didn't move. She let her lashes stay low, feigning sleep while her heart slammed against her ribs. Rogue. In her world, that word was a death sentence. A rogue was fair game for any pack to hunt, kill, or claim as they saw fit. No shelter, no law, no rights. Which meant her own pack was now her enemy. And the only thing standing between her and them was the Ruthless Alpha of the Northern Pack, the one who'd just claimed her under the blood oath. The morning came without warning. She woke to a sharp knock against the heavy wooden door, the sound pulling her out of a shallow, restless sleep. Her body was warm beneath the furs, but the air in the room was cold enough to sting her nose. For a moment, she thought she might have dreamed the night before the rogues, the silver eyes, the blood oath, but then the scent hit her. Cedar. Smoke. That faint wildfire thread curling into the air from somewhere just outside. Her wolf stirred instantly, pressing against the edges of her control, more alert than she was. The door opened without waiting for an answer, and a tall figure stepped inside. Not the alpha. One of his wolves, broad-shouldered, human skin this time, his expression unreadable. He didn't bother with a greeting. "You're wanted in the yard." The words carried no explanation, and he didn't stay long enough for her to ask. The door closed, leaving her with the crackling fire and the lingering scent that wouldn't leave her head. She got up, muscles protesting, the events of the night before still fresh in every ache and bruise. Her bare feet touched the cold floor, and her breath caught. She was still alive. That meant whatever the Alpha wanted, it wasn't to kill her yet. Outside, the air was sharp enough to bite. Snow crunched under her steps as she crossed the yard. Wolves moved in the periphery, some in human form, others padding silently on four legs. Every set of eyes tracked her, not with curiosity, but with the silent awareness of predators assessing something new in their territory. And then she saw him. The Alpha stood in the center of a wide, packed area of snow, his dark hair catching the pale morning light. He wasn't dressed for warmth, just a simple black shirt and loose pants, his stance relaxed but ready. Those silver eyes found her immediately, and it felt like they'd been waiting for her all morning. "Shift," he said. Her wolf surged at the command, but she held it back, her jaw tightening. "Why?" He didn't repeat himself. He didn't need to. When she didn't move fast enough, he took a slow step closer, the ground crunching under his boots. "If you stay here, you train here. You're not a guest. You're not fragile. And if your former pack has called you rogue, you'll need to prove you can survive it." Her wolf didn't like the implication. Survive it. As if this was all about endurance, not strength. He waited, and the silence between them grew heavy enough to press against her skin. Finally, she gave in, letting the shift pull through her bones. Heat rolled under her skin, muscles twisting, spine lengthening, until her wolf stood in the snow, paws sinking slightly in the packed ground. His gaze swept over her, not with the softness of admiration, but with the measuring precision of someone who needed to know exactly what she was capable of. Then he shifted, the change rippling over him like shadow and flame. The black wolf that had torn through the rogues now stood before her again, silver eyes steady, shoulders rolling with quiet power. They circled each other first. Her wolf's ears were forward, her tail high, refusing to submit. His was lower, heavier, every movement confident in a way that made her pulse quicken. The first strike came from him. Not a killing blow, just a sudden, sharp shove of his shoulder against hers, enough to knock her off balance. She snarled, lunging back, claws scraping the snow. They traded blows, quick, sharp snaps of teeth, fast sidesteps, paws thudding against frozen ground. He pushed her, forced her to adjust faster than she wanted to. Every move he made was designed to pull her wolf forward, to make her react. And then it happened. In one fluid motion, he knocked her sideways, pinning her against the cold ground with the full weight of his body. His paw pressed against her shoulder, claws just sharp enough to catch on fur and skin right over the fading mate mark. The heat shot through her like a spark hitting dry kindling. Her wolf froze, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. The mate bond pull. It was impossible. They weren't fated. She knew that. He knew that. And yet, it was there, humming between them, wrapping heat around her ribs and flooding her chest. Her breath hitched. Her wolf's heart pounded. His silver eyes didn't leave hers. Not even when he stepped back, giving her space. Her wolf stood slowly, shaking the snow from her fur, but the heat stayed. It didn't fade. And worse, her mark was glowing. Faint, but visible even through the thick fur. She caught it in the corner of her vision, a soft, unnatural light pulsing just under the skin. He saw it too. His gaze lingered for a beat too long before he turned away, shifting back into his human form with effortless control. "Again," he said. They trained until the sun dipped low, her body aching from every collision, every roll in the snow. The bond's pull didn't fade. It sharpened with every touch, every glance. Her wolf hated it, craved it, fought against it all at once. By the time she collapsed into the furs that night, exhaustion wrapped tight around her, she was almost afraid to close her eyes. She didn't want to dream of him. She didn't want to see those silver eyes again. But she did. The dream was fire and shadow, silver eyes watching her through smoke. A heat she couldn't escape, couldn't want to escape. She moved toward it, the air thick and burning, every step pulling her deeper. And when she reached for him, His claws caught her skin, sharp, deliberate, dragging down her chest. She woke with a gasp, the firelight in the room flickering against the walls. Her heart pounded, her skin slick with sweat despite the cold. She sat up and froze. Her shirt was torn. And there, on her chest, were 4 perfect claw marks. They hadn't been there when she fell asleep. If this moment made your heart race, remember, this story's far from over. Don't drift away now. Stay with me, here in Sophia's Werewolf Chronicles, where every heartbeat counts and every choice could be the one that changes everything. You wouldn't want to miss what comes next, would you? The moon rose like a blade in the sky, silver and sharp, cutting through the darkness until every shadow looked alive. Its light poured over the snow, making the yard glow pale, almost too bright for night. The air was tense. Wolves paced along the edges of the northern pack's territory, some in human form, others in fur, their eyes catching the light in quick flashes as they moved. Full moon nights were never still. They pulled at wolves, tugged at instincts buried under skin and bone, and brought dangers crawling out from wherever they'd been hiding. Rogues became bolder when the moon was high. Hunger, for blood, for dominance, ran hotter. She'd been told to stay close to the patrols, but staying close wasn't enough to quiet the restless hum in her wolf's chest. Every nerve felt sharper, every sound too loud, every scent too vivid. And beneath all of it was the lingering pull she'd been trying to ignore since training, the cedar, the smoke, the wildfire scent that seemed to find her no matter where she stood. He was somewhere nearby. She didn't have to look to know it. The patrol split near the ridge, a narrow trail curling deeper into the pines. She followed the smaller group, her eyes scanning the snow for tracks. The trees here were older, their branches heavy under the weight of the snow, bending low enough that she had to duck beneath them. That was when she heard it. Not a howl. Not the sound of claws breaking through snow. A voice. Her name. It was soft, almost swallowed by the wind, but it was there, clear enough that her wolf froze mid-step. The hair along her neck lifted, her ears straining for the sound again. And then it came. Her name again, whispered like it had been carried on smoke. She turned, scanning the trees. At first, she saw nothing but shadows shifting between the trunks. And then one moved wrong, slow, deliberate. A figure stepped forward, human-skinned but wrong in the way his eyes gleamed too bright under the moon. A rogue. Her wolf's growl built low, instinctively, but he only smiled. "I know what he did to you," the rogue said, his voice thin but curling with satisfaction. "Your mate. Your fated mate." Her chest tightened. She didn't speak. Didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing his words landed anywhere near her. The rogue stepped closer, his bare feet sinking into the snow without flinching at the cold. "He didn't reject you to save you. He rejected you because you were in the way." Her claws pricked under her skin, heat rising in her chest. The forest seemed to lean in around them, every creak of the trees a warning. "You think he's your enemy now?" the rogue went on. "You should have seen him the night he made the deal. Smiling while he gave your name away like it was worth nothing." The words hit harder than she wanted to admit. She told herself the rejection had been cruel, but necessary, that maybe there'd been a reason she didn't know. But this was something else. The rogue's grin widened. "Ask him where he was the night before the moon chose you. Ask him who he was with." Her wolf snarled, the sound spilling into the air before she could stop it. That was when the rogue moved. He was faster than she expected, closing the distance in a blur, claws catching the edge of her shoulder as she twisted away. Pain flared hot down her arm, and the snow beneath her boots gave way, sending her crashing backward into the drift. The rogue loomed over her, breath hot and rancid in the cold air. "Ask him," he whispered. "Ask him before you choose the wrong alpha twice." He didn't get to say more. The snow behind him exploded, a black shadow hitting him with enough force to knock the air from his lungs. The impact was violent, a sound of claws tearing through flesh, of bones breaking under weight and fury. The Alpha. He was all teeth and power, silver eyes locked on the rogue like nothing else existed. The fight was over before it began. Blood sprayed across the snow, steam curling up into the cold air as the alpha tore the life from him with a precision that was more execution than battle. She couldn't look away. The steam rising from the blood caught the moonlight, a dark, shifting haze that blurred the edge between reality and something older, something primal. Her wolf didn't flinch. She watched, unblinking, as the alpha's jaws released the rogue, the body collapsing into the snow like it had never belonged to anything living. For a long moment, the only sound was the alpha's breathing, steady, deep, the rhythm of a predator who'd finished what he came for. Then his gaze found hers. It wasn't soft. It wasn't meant to reassure. It was sharp, silver cutting straight through her, a silent demand she couldn't name, but felt down to her bones. The patrol arrived seconds later, their voices low, their eyes flicking between her and the blood-soaked snow. No one asked what happened. They didn't need to. The alpha turned from her without a word, his shoulders tense as he moved through the snow, and she followed because not following felt dangerous in a way she didn't want to test. But as they reached the edge of the patrol route, she stopped. Something, a shift in the air, a change in the weight of the silence, made her turn back toward the trees. And there, at the edge of the shadows, stood her fated mate. His eyes were on her. Not the alpha. Not the blood. Just her. Beside him was a woman she'd never seen before, her hand curled into his arm, her body pressed close in a way that left no question about what she was to him now. The moonlight caught on his expression. And he was smiling. The snow hadn't even stopped steaming when she turned away from the tree line. Her fated mate's smile was burned into her mind like a brand, that easy, familiar curve of his lips, only now it looked cruel, deliberate. And the woman on his arm, the way she'd leaned into him, the way his hand had settled possessively at her hip, it told a story she didn't want to hear but already understood. She followed the alpha back toward the heart of the northern pack's territory, her steps heavy in the snow. Her wolf was restless, pacing inside her chest, but it wasn't for him, not anymore. The betrayal was too loud to ignore. Still, every time her eyes lifted, they found the dark outline of the alpha ahead of her, his shoulders broad, his movements sure. He didn't look back once, but she knew he was aware of her every step. The patrol dispersed at the gates, their eyes avoiding hers, but she could feel their curiosity hanging in the air. She trailed the alpha into the hall, the warmth hitting her all at once, making her skin prickle with the shift from cold to heat. The fire in the center burned bright, casting his shadow long across the floor. She didn't wait for him to speak. What was that? Her voice came out sharper than she intended. In the trees. He was there. She swallowed the word like it tasted wrong. My mate. The alpha didn't stop moving. He pulled his coat off slowly, hanging it over the back of a chair, and only when the silence had stretched too far did he answer. He's not your mate anymore. Her hands curled into fists. You think I don't know that? She stepped closer, the heat from the fire catching her face. What I don't know is why he was smiling at me like he'd already won. The alpha's silver gaze found hers then, sharp and unblinking. Because in his mind, he has. Something cold twisted low in her stomach. Why? He took a slow step toward her, closing the space until the heat from him matched the fire's. Because he got what he wanted. You were never meant to be his for long. The bond was only useful while it served him. Her breath caught, the words sinking deep. What are you saying? The alpha's jaw tightened. Your rejection wasn't a choice he made in the moment. It was a bargain. You were promised to another pack before you even knew what the word mate meant. The air seemed to thin, every inhale scraping against her throat. Promised? To who? He didn't flinch when he said it. To mine. The floor felt unsteady beneath her. She stared at him, searching for the lie, but there was no hesitation in his voice, no flicker in his eyes. You're telling me my entire life has been— She stopped herself before the word trap left her lips. Planned? He didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. The silence between them was its own kind of truth. She took a step back, her wolf bristling, not sure whether to bare her teeth or run. And why would your pack want me? Why would you? The alpha's expression shifted, something darker settling in his gaze. Because you're worth killing for. The words were too calm, too certain. She felt them like a weight settling over her shoulders, heavy enough to make her knees want to give. Her wolf didn't shy away, though. Her wolf liked the sound of it, liked the danger in it, liked the way it made her heart race. He stepped closer again, slow enough that she could have moved away, but she didn't. His voice dropped lower, almost a growl. And if I can feel the pull you fight every time I'm near, I know he felt it too. That's why he feared you. That's why he traded you away. Her heart pounded. You don't know what I feel. His silver eyes didn't waver. Don't I? For a moment, she couldn't look away from him. And then he said something that made the heat between them shift into something entirely different. I've been dreaming of you for months. Her breath caught in her throat. Her wolf froze. He didn't look away when he said it, didn't give her room to dismiss it as some manipulation. Not just your face. Your scent. The sound of your voice. The way your wolf would challenge me before you even spoke. She wanted to tell him he was lying, but her wolf betrayed her, pressing forward, answering to the low hum of command in his tone. She felt it in her bones, in the way her breath quickened without permission, in the way her skin heated under his gaze. You can fight it all you want, he said quietly. But the truth doesn't care what you believe. She hated that her body reacted, hated that her wolf leaned toward him like he'd already earned her loyalty. She turned away, needing to break the connection, to think without the pull of his presence muddying the air. But as she stepped toward the door, it opened before she could reach it. One of his wolves stood there, eyes sharp, posture tense. The council has summoned you, the messenger said, his gaze flicking to her and then back to the alpha. Both of you. They're calling it an inquiry into the stolen she-wolf. The title landed like ice water against her skin. Stolen. Her wolf's growl built in her chest, low and dangerous. She looked back at the alpha, and for the first time, his expression wasn't unreadable. It was cold. Focused. Ready for a fight. And without breaking eye contact, he said, then let them see exactly who they think they're dealing with. ChatGPT said. The journey to the High Council's hall was silent. The alpha walked ahead, his strides unhurried but deliberate, every step cutting a path through the snow that the others instinctively followed. She trailed behind, the cold biting at her face, the wind catching stray strands of her hair and pulling them into her eyes. The air here felt different, heavier, sharper, like it carried the weight of too many old grudges. By the time they reached the council grounds, her stomach was tight with a tension she couldn't shake. The building itself was a fortress of stone and wood, its tall doors carved with the crests of every pack represented. Wolves stood in silent formation at either side, their eyes tracking her as though measuring whether she was worth the trouble her presence had caused. The alpha didn't glance back at her before pushing the doors open. The hall inside was bright with torchlight, the heat thick and dry, but it did nothing to soften the atmosphere. Every head turned when she stepped in behind him. She recognized him instantly. Her fated mate stood near the center of the room, tall and composed, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes, they were watching her in that way they used to when they'd been alone under the stars. Once, that look would have made her chest ache. Now it just felt wrong. The sharp scent of him hit her next, familiar and clear, but instead of calling her wolf forward, it did nothing. No warmth. No spark. Just a hollow echo of something that used to matter. Her wolf stayed still, eyes fixed elsewhere, uninterested. He spoke first. She belongs with me. His voice carried easily across the space, but it was the controlled restraint in it that struck her, like every word was a piece of a performance meant for the audience, not for her. The alpha beside her didn't answer right away. His presence filled the hall without a single sound, the silver in his eyes unflinching as he regarded her fated mate. When he did speak, it was calm, but edged in steel. She belongs where she is safe. She's my mate, the other wolf countered, jaw tight. The alpha's voice didn't rise. Then you should have acted like it. A murmur rolled through the room. The council members shifted, some exchanging glances, others leaning forward as though they didn't want to miss a single breath of the exchange. Her pulse was steady now, strangely so. Standing here, looking at the wolf who had once been her entire world, she felt nothing. No pull in her chest. No ache in her wolf. The realization landed quietly but completely. Whatever bond had tied them had been severed for good. The council leader, an older wolf with deep lines etched into his face, raised a hand. Enough. His voice cut through the low noise in the room, commanding attention without effort. We're here to decide the matter of the disputed she-wolf. The claim is contested. The circumstances are unusual. His gaze flicked to her, and for a moment it felt like the weight of every law, every expectation, was bearing down on her shoulders. She could feel eyes on her from every direction, some curious, some cold, some openly hostile. Then a sensation rippled through her, low and insistent. Her shoulder burned, not like the heat of the mate bond she'd known before, but something darker. She glanced down just enough to see it. The silver of her mark was fading, its light snuffed out, replaced by deep black lines that curled under her skin like ink sinking into paper. Her wolf lifted her head inside her, not in fear, but in recognition. The council leader's gaze sharpened. "It seems," he said slowly, "that the choice will fall to her." Her fated mate's voice cut in. "She knows where she belongs." The Alpha's was right behind it. "She knows where she'll survive." The silence that followed was sharp enough to sting. Every gaze in the room pressed down on her, the weight of both men's stares anchoring her in place. The council leader nodded once, his tone final. "You will decide now. If you've been following her journey, you already know, this choice will break something in her no matter which way she turns. But tell me, if you were standing in her place, with your heart already in pieces, would you go back to the one who shattered it, or risk everything for the one who could destroy you in an entirely different way? If you want to see what happens when the council forces her hand, don't just walk away now. Like this, subscribe to Sophia's Werewolf Chronicles, and stay until the last word, because trust me, the next twist will hurt." The silence in the council chamber stretched until it became its own kind of pressure. She stood in the center of it, every gaze like a weight against her skin, every breath she drew feeling too shallow, too loud. Her fated mate's eyes were fixed on her, familiar, steady, once a comfort. But now they were a demand. Behind that steadiness, she could see it, the assumption that she would choose him, that she would step back into the life he had built without her, that she would fall in line because she always had before. And then there was the Alpha at her side. The one who hadn't once told her what to do. The one whose presence filled the air like smoke and shadow, dangerous and unyielding. He didn't ask for her choice. He didn't tell her what it should be. He simply stood there, waiting, silver eyes locked on hers like he already knew. Her wolf paced inside her, restless, pulling toward the danger, toward the heat, toward the one who hadn't broken her trust because he'd never promised her safety in the first place. The council leader's voice cut through her thoughts. "Now." She inhaled, the cold, dry air scraping down her throat, and stepped forward. Her fated mate's shoulders eased in that moment, certain he had won. That certainty almost made her smile. Almost. She turned her gaze to the Alpha, and the room seemed to draw tighter around them. Him. The word landed like a strike. Her fated mate's face changed, just slightly at first, a crack in the practiced calm, a flicker of disbelief that quickly burned into something sharper. "You can't mean." "I can," she said, her voice steady even as her chest tightened. "And I do." The Alpha's expression didn't shift, but his wolf surged forward in her senses, brushing against hers in a way that felt like a hand closing around the back of her neck. Not possessive. Not yet. But claiming her in front of every witness in the room. Then the pain came. It started at her shoulder, where the mark had turned black, a deep, tearing heat that burned through her muscles and bone like the bond was being ripped out piece by piece. She gasped, knees buckling, but the Alpha moved before she could fall. His hand caught her arm, steadying her just enough for the second wave to hit. The mate bond snapped. It was a soundless break, but she felt it like a shattering glass inside her chest. The absence it left behind was immediate and brutal, a void that pulled the air from her lungs. Her wolf howled in her head, not for the mate lost, but for the wound it left behind. She would have hit the floor if not for him. The Alpha lifted her as though she weighed nothing, his arms solid, his scent closing in around her, cedar, smoke, wildfire, until the pain had nowhere to go but through him. She dimly heard voices, counsel murmurs, her fated mate calling her name like it mattered now, but they blurred into nothing under the steady rhythm of the Alpha's heartbeat against her ear. He carried her out without looking back, his steps measured, his wolf a dark shadow pacing at the edges of her senses, teeth bared at anything that dared draw near. By the time they reached his territory again, the pain had dulled to a deep ache, but her body still felt heavy, her thoughts thick. He didn't set her down in her own quarters. Instead, he took her straight to his. He laid her down on the furs, the firelight flickering against the walls, and for a moment he didn't move away. He stood there, watching her with that unreadable gaze, before shifting smoothly, his wolf taking form in a ripple of dark fur and silver eyes. Her wolf stirred, but didn't resist when he circled her once before lying down at the edge of the bed. The heat from him reached her through the cold air, his breathing slow, steady, anchoring hers until she realized she was matching his rhythm without thinking. Her heartbeat began to sync with his. Sleep took her quickly, pulled under not by exhaustion alone, but by the strange sense of being guarded. Not safe, never safe, but shielded. In the dark, a voice found her. Not his. Not her own. Something older. The wolf you choose, it whispered, close enough to feel against her ear, will be the wolf who burns the world. Her eyes snapped open, the fire still crackling in the hearth, the Alpha's silver gaze watching her from the shadows. And she couldn't tell if the heat that rushed through her then was fear, or the first spark of something far more dangerous. The fire's glow carved the Alpha's features into something almost inhuman, the silver in his eyes catching the light in sharp, fleeting glints. He hadn't spoken since the moment she woke from the dream, but his silence didn't feel empty, it felt deliberate, as if he were weighing the exact moment to break it. His wolf was still there in the room with her, pacing just beyond the edges of sight, a presence as tangible as the heat in the air. Finally, he moved closer. His voice was low, roughened at the edges. That voice you heard in your sleep, it wasn't just a dream. Her wolf stirred, ears forward. What do you mean? She asked, though her tone held more steel than curiosity. He stopped just short of the bed, looking down at her like he was measuring whether she could bear what he was about to say. You're not who you think you are. You never were. Her pulse sharpened, but she didn't look away. There's blood in you older than your pack's name, he continued. Alpha blood. Not from your father. From your mother's line. She blinked, the words hitting in waves. My mother wasn't an alpha. No, he agreed, but her mother was. And hers before that. They ruled a pack so old, it was gone before most remembered its name. Wiped out by wolves who feared what that blood carried. Her breath came slower now, heavier, as if her body knew something her mind didn't want yet. What did it carry? His gaze locked on hers, and for the first time, there was no wall between them. The power to lead every wolf who could hear your voice. To bend even the most defiant to your will. To unite packs that would rather tear each other apart. Her wolf went still, completely still, in a way it never had before. That's why your fated mate let you go, the Alpha said. Not because you were unworthy. Because you were dangerous to the wrong wolves. And now, his jaw tightened. Now he wants to finish what was started the day your bloodline was hunted to near extinction. Her chest tightened, the echo of the mate bond's snap still lingering in her ribs. He wants to kill me. He wants to erase you, the Alpha corrected. Your blood. Your name. The prophecy that comes with it. She shook her head, not in disbelief, but in a stubborn refusal to be defined by his warning alone. Then he should have finished the job when he had the chance. Something flickered in the Alpha's expression, approval, maybe, or the faintest hint of pride. He took another step closer, close enough now that she could see the subtle shift in his gaze, the way the silver deepened to a shade that caught every bit of the firelight. There's something else, he said, his voice almost quiet. Your eyes. My eyes. They're not always the same. He reached down, fingers brushing under her chin to lift her face toward him. When your wolf answers to her birthright, they flash gold. The mark of the Alpha Queen. She wanted to look away, but the touch was grounding, unyielding. And what does that mean? It means, he said, voice dropping lower, that if you survive what's coming, there won't be a wolf in the world who won't know your name. The room felt smaller now, the air thicker, charged. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears, but it wasn't the rhythm alone, it was that strange synchrony she'd felt since the night she chose him, that pull of something aligning without permission. When his gaze dropped to her mouth, her wolf pushed forward, not in surrender, but in challenge. Her breath hitched as the space between them narrowed to nothing, his presence flooding every sense she had. And then, just as his lips brushed hers, the sound shattered the moment. A howl, low, urgent, too close to the heart of the territory, split the night air. He pulled back, silver eyes snapping to the door, his wolf already surging forward. The sound was followed by the crack of wood, the heavy rhythm of boots in snow, and shouts echoing from the outer wall. A raid. The Alpha was already moving before she could speak, his wolf slipping free in a fluid, violent shift, for bristling, eyes burning like frost and fire combined. She rose to follow, but the prophecy's words whispered in her head again, as if the chaos outside had stirred them awake. The wolf you choose will be the wolf who burns the world. If you've made it this far, you're part of her fight now. And I want to hear it. What would you do if the wolf who swore to protect you was also the one prophecy claimed could destroy everything? Tell me in the comments. And don't just lurk. Your voice matters here in Sophia's Werewolf Chronicles, because the war she's walking into, it's going to need witnesses. The night was already alive with sound before she cleared the threshold of the Alpha's quarters. Howls rolled through the cold air in quick succession, warnings, commands, battle cries. Snow was churned to slush under the pounding of boots and paws, the scent of blood beginning to curl into the wind. He was already at the heart of it, the black wolf tearing through the front line with a precision that left no wasted motion. His silver eyes burned even brighter in the chaos, a beacon her wolf locked onto without hesitation. She felt the command before she heard it, an unspoken pull, deep and irresistible, threading through muscle and bone. Shift. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't even words in the way humans spoke. It was a force, pure and undeniable, that swept through her like fire breaking loose. Heat flared under her skin, her vision sharpening as the world broke into layers of scent and sound. Her bones stretched, spine arcing, and fur burst along her skin in a rush of heat and cold all at once. When she hit the ground on 4 legs, it felt like the first real breath she'd ever taken. The snow was no longer cold, it was simply there. The scents were no longer muddled, they were crisp, distinct. She could taste the metallic tang of blood in the air, the musk of rogues, the faint undercurrent of fear from the younger wolves holding the wall. Her wolf surged forward, answering him. He saw her. Even in the middle of the fray, he turned toward her for one heartbeat, silver eyes locking with hers. And for that instant, the noise of the battle faded. She didn't need words to understand what he wanted. They moved together. The first rogue didn't even see her coming. She hit him low, jaws clamping down on his hind leg, dragging him off balance. The Alpha was there before the rogue could recover, his teeth sinking into the exposed throat. Blood sprayed across the snow, steaming in the cold air, and they moved on before the body had even stilled. The battle became a rhythm. He struck high, she struck low. He drove them into her reach, and she finished what he started. It wasn't planned. It didn't need to be. Their wolves moved like they'd been hunting together for years, each anticipating the other's next step. Every time her gaze met his across the chaos, something tightened in her chest. Not the bond she'd once known, but something newer, more dangerous. His silver eyes burned like steel catching the sun, and she knew without doubt that hers were gold now. Another rogue lunged at her from the side, teeth bared, but she pivoted, catching his momentum and throwing him off balance. The Alpha's weight crashed into him a second later, the sound of snapping bone cutting through the air. Blood seeped into the snow between them, and for a moment, they stood there, silver and gold eyes locked over the still body, breathing in sync. The fighting didn't slow. More rogues poured in from the trees, their eyes wild, their movements desperate. She lost track of how many they brought down together, her muscles burning, her fur streaked with crimson. The snow was slick under her paws, but every time she faltered, he was there, blocking a blow, taking down a threat before it reached her flank. Her wolf didn't resist him anymore. She matched his pace, his aggression, his unrelenting push forward. Every command, spoken or unspoken, was met with her obedience, not from submission, but from the knowledge that together they were untouchable. And then she heard it. A cry, not a battle cry, not the sound of a wolf in the kill. This was different. A voice she knew, thin and panicked, cutting through the chaos like a blade. She spun toward the sound, scanning the wall, the gates, the tree line. Her heart slammed harder when she saw movement near the far end of the fight, a figure being dragged back into the trees by two rogues, their forms half-shifted, their claws locked around their captive's arms. It wasn't just any pack member. It was someone she loved. Her wolf lunged forward instinctively, but the alpha was there in an instant, blocking her path with a low, sharp snarl that stopped her mid-step. His silver eyes burned into hers, the unspoken warning clear. Don't break formation. Don't run blind. She bristled, the urge to chase almost unbearable. But in the heartbeat she hesitated. The rogues vanished into the shadows of the trees. The battle still raged around them, but all she could hear now was the fading sound of that voice, swallowed by the forest. If you've been holding your breath, I hope you're ready to keep doing it, because they took more than just a hostage tonight. And you're not going to like what the alpha does when he finds out who. And if you're still here with me in Sophia's Werewolf Chronicles, stay. The hunt hasn't even begun. The forest was too quiet after the battle. The kind of quiet that didn't soothe, it pressed. It filled the spaces between heartbeats, stretching them into something heavy. Snow clung to her fur in uneven patches, streaked with blood that wasn't all hers. The metallic tang of it still coated her tongue. Her chest rose and fell too fast, her wolf pacing under her skin as the truth of what happened kept replaying. They had taken someone she loved. She wanted to run after them now, tear through the trees until her claws found flesh. But the alpha hadn't given the order yet. His wolf stood at the edge of the clearing, black fur bristling, silver eyes locked on the tree line where the rogues had vanished. The rest of the pack held back, waiting, tense, restless, but silent. When he shifted back, steam curling off his skin in the frigid air, he didn't look at anyone but her. They took them because of you, he said, voice low but carrying. And they'll use them to get to you. If we go now, they'll be ready. You're not walking into their teeth without the bond sealed. She froze. Her wolf didn't. Her wolf surged forward, ears forward, tail high, not in challenge, but in awareness. What bond? She asked, though she already knew. He took a step closer, snow crunching under his boots. The blood oath marks you under my protection. But an oath can be broken. A mating bond can't. Her stomach tightened. You want me to? I want you alive, he cut in, voice edged with something dangerous. And right now, this is the only way to make sure no wolf, not your former mate, not a council elder, not a rogue, can claim you without going through me. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She hated that her wolf was leaning into the idea, hated the heat pooling low in her body at the thought. She should have said no. She should have told him this wasn't part of her plan, that she didn't trust him enough to let this happen. But her wolf had already made the decision. The moon was rising higher, staining the snow with its pale light, and it wasn't the usual full moon. It was red, deep and heavy in the sky, casting everything in a strange, almost violent glow. The blood moon. The air felt charged, each breath carrying the weight of something ancient. He felt it too. She could see it in the way his shoulders squared, in the way his gaze sharpened until it was all she could see. He closed the space between them in 3 slow, deliberate steps. Shift, he ordered. The word hit like a current through her, and before she could think, her bones were lengthening, for sliding over her skin, paws sinking into the snow. She stood before him, her wolf's breath fogging in the cold, heart pounding in a rhythm that didn't feel entirely her own. He shifted too, the black wolf emerging in a ripple of shadow, silver eyes locking on hers. They circled, slow, deliberate, the air thick with heat that had nothing to do with the cold. When they collided, it wasn't gentle. It was teeth and muscle, bodies pressing, testing, the kind of contact that blurred the line between dominance and desire. Her wolf didn't yield. She met every push, every snap of his jaws, until the moment his weight crashed over hers, pinning her into the snow. The bond flared. It wasn't like the one she'd had before. This wasn't warm and slow, built over time. This was immediate, primal, like fire racing through a dry forest, unstoppable and absolute. It threaded through her chest, down her spine, into her bones, until there was no part of her that didn't feel him. Her wolf's growl melted into something else, a low, deep sound that answered his. His teeth grazed the side of her neck, not breaking the skin, but close enough for her whole body to tense. And then, with one decisive movement, he bit down. Pain and heat exploded together. The mark seared under his bite, and for a moment the world went white. She could feel his wolf in her mind, not just at the edges but inside, like he'd walked through every barrier she'd ever built and burned them down behind him. Her vision cleared to the sight of their mark, no longer the blackened scar of rejection, no longer silver. It burned crimson now, glowing against her fur, the color deep and alive like living fire. He pulled back, his muzzle stained with her blood, and met her gaze. Silver eyes. Gold eyes. The two locked together over the steam rising from the snow between them. For a long, unbroken moment, they just breathed, two heartbeats, one rhythm, the bond humming so strong she could feel it in her teeth. Then the wind shifted. Dark clouds rolled fast over the moon, the red light dimming as the first crack of thunder broke the air. A storm was coming, sudden and violent, but beneath the sound, something else moved, an echo of the prophecy that had haunted her dreams. The wolf you choose will be the wolf who burns the world. Her wolf stood taller inside her, not in fear, but in readiness. And somewhere beyond the trees, the rogues still had someone she loved. You felt it, didn't you? That mark is more than a bond, it's a fuse. And the storm that's coming will light it. Tell me in the comments, would you trust a bond born in blood? Or would you fear it? Don't go anywhere. In Sophia's Werewolf Chronicles, the next breath could be the one that changes everything. The storm did not wait until morning. By the time they returned to the Alpha's quarters, wind howled through the rafters and snow slammed against the walls in sharp, icy bursts. The fire inside burned hot, but it wasn't enough to melt the tension in the room. The bond still hummed between them, alive and unyielding, a constant reminder of what they'd done under the blood moon. He stood by the window, bare from the waist up, skin marked with the aftermath of battle, scratches already healing, bruises fading as his wolf worked through them. His silver eyes reflected the lightning beyond the glass, unblinking as he scanned the dark tree line. She hadn't spoken since they came inside. Her wolf was still too close to the surface, still too aware of him. The bond made his presence impossible to ignore. She could feel the pull of his heartbeat like it was inside her chest. She hated how easily her breathing wanted to match his. He spoke without turning from the window. They took someone to bait you. His voice was low measured. They'll regret it. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The air between them was already thick with the unspoken agreement. Whoever they had taken, they were getting them back. Then he turned, and the shift in his focus was like the air pressure changing. Listen to me. His tone was heavier now, a weight meant to anchor her attention. No one takes you from me. No one. Her wolf didn't bristle at the claim. It stilled, like it understood this wasn't just possession, it was promise. He came closer, each step deliberate until he stood in front of her. The firelight caught the faint crimson glow of their shared mark on her shoulder. His gaze dropped to it briefly before locking back on her face. I swear to you, I will destroy anyone who tries to touch what's mine. The vow settled over her like a second bond, heavier, more dangerous. And yet, she didn't look away. A knock broke the moment. One of his wolves stepped in, a strip of blood-stained cloth in his hand. Message from the southern border. The Alpha took it without a word, unfolding the fabric to reveal black letters scrawled in something too dark to be ink. His jaw tightened as his eyes scanned the message. When he looked up at her, the silver in his gaze was colder than she'd ever seen it. It's from him. Her stomach tightened. What does it say? The alpha's voice was flat, but it carried enough force to make the fire crackle louder. I'll kill him before the next moon. The room went still. Her wolf pressed forward, not in fear, but in recognition of the threat's weight. It wasn't an empty promise. Her fated mate was warning her that the countdown had already begun. She stepped closer, not entirely sure why. Then we don't wait for the next moon. The corner of his mouth lifted, but it wasn't a smile. No, he agreed. We don't. That night, she didn't sleep easily. Every time her eyes closed, the prophecy's words whispered through her mind, softer now, but no less sharp. The wolf you choose will be the wolf who burns the world. The storm outside bled into her dreams, and in them, she saw flashes her own eyes, gold and burning, the alpha's silver gaze locked on hers through firelight, blood boiling into steam against snow. And always, always, the whisper. Burns the world. She woke to darkness, the fire burned low, and the faint scent of another wolf in the room that didn't belong. Her wolf was on her feet before her human mind caught up, a low growl rumbling in her chest. The alpha was already awake, already moving toward the far wall where the shadows seemed too thick. His hand shot forward, and a figure was dragged into the firelight, one of his own pack, eyes wide, breath sharp, the scent of fear overpowering. The alpha's voice was calm, lethal. Tell her what you told them. The traitor's gaze flicked to her, then away. They knew where to find you. Every step you took outside these walls. I told them. Her wolf surged, a snarl tearing from her throat. The bond between her and the alpha thrummed, hard and hot, the weight of his fury pressing against hers until she could barely tell where one ended and the other began. You've been with her through every betrayal, but this isn't just an enemy at the gates. It's a knife already in her ribs. And don't look away now. Sophia's Werewolf Chronicles isn't done breaking you. The wolf moon rose swollen and red, bleeding its light across the snow like the sky itself had been torn open. It wasn't just a full moon, it was an omen. Even the air knew it. Every breath she took carried the metallic taste of tension, like the whole night was holding itself still, waiting for the first drop of blood to spill. She stood at the edge of the northern pack's territory, the alpha at her side, their wolves assembled behind them in a wall of muscle and fur. The rogues had come in force, not in the shadows like before, but bold, loud, ready for war. Somewhere beyond the tree-line, her fated mate's pack was waiting. Watching. The traitor was bound in the center of the clearing, forced to kneel in the snow. His head was lowered, but she could still see the twitch of his jaw, the flicker of something in his eyes, not regret, not even fear. Defiance. The alpha's voice cut through the cold. You gave them our steps. Our walls. Our weakness. The traitor's reply was low, almost lost under the growl of the gathered wolves. I gave them you. Her wolf moved before her mind caught up. She crossed the distance in a single stride, her claws unsheathing with the shift, her body flowing from skin to fur in a surge of heat and purpose. She struck clean and fast, her teeth closing on his throat before he had time to flinch. The snow caught the first spray of blood, steaming under the moonlight. The memory of her first night here slammed into her, the same color, the same steam curling up into the cold, the same sharp scent in her nose. It was the mark of every turning point in her life, blood and snow. But there was no time to breathe. The first wave hit the clearing like a storm breaking its dam, wolves from the trees, shadows spilling over the white ground, snarls splitting the night air. The alpha met them head-on, his black wolf tearing through the front line, silver eyes flashing each time he glanced for her. She answered his checks with her own, striking low when he struck high, their rhythm locked in that dangerous, perfect unity they'd forged. It was chaos. Teeth clashed with bone. Snow churned into red mud under paws. She moved through it like she was part of the storm itself, her wolf finding every opening, every throat, every weakness. Then she saw him. Not the alpha. Not a rogue. Her fated mate. He was moving through the fight like it barely touched him, his focus a direct line to her. Their eyes met, and there was nothing left of the bond they'd once had, only the cold recognition that they'd been on opposite sides for a long time now. She didn't see the blow coming until it landed. A body slammed into hers from the side, knocking her into the snow, claws raking her flank. She twisted, teeth finding the attacker's leg, and realized too late who it was. Someone she loved. Someone who should have been nowhere near the fight. They'd been taken, turned, thrown back at her as a weapon. Her wolf hesitated for a fraction of a second, and that was all it took. Another rogue hit them both, and when she came up out of the tangle, they were bleeding out in the snow. The sound that tore from her chest was raw and unshaped, part human, part wolf. She fought harder after that, every strike heavier, every bite deeper, until the last rogue in her path went down and stayed down. The clearing was littered with bodies, steam rising from the snow in curling ribbons. The battle was ending, but the air didn't loosen its grip. Something was wrong. Her gaze found the far edge of the field. Her fated mate was on the ground, blood pooling beneath him, his breathing ragged. For a heartbeat, she thought it was over, that the war had ended here. And then he smiled. It wasn't relief. It wasn't peace. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret she hadn't learned yet. You've been here through every wound, every betrayal, every choice, but now, under the wolf moon, everything shifts. If you felt that drop in your chest when you saw him smile, you know it means something's coming. Something worse. So here's my challenge, don't just watch. Like this, subscribe and share it. Let the rest of the pack know what's at stake. Because the next chapter in Sophia's Werewolf Chronicles will not forgive you for missing it. Snow crunched under her paws as she closed the distance to her fated mate, her breath clouding in the air, her muscles coiled with the memory of his smile. She had seen it before, the kind of smile that came when a trap had already been sprung and all that was left was to watch it close. But before she reached him, the scent hit her. Not his. Not rogue. Not death. Blood. His blood. And the Alpha's. Her head snapped to the left. Through the haze of steam and churned snow, she found him, her Alpha, half-shifted, one knee in the red-stained ground, black fur giving way to bare skin slick with blood. His hand was pressed to his side, silver eyes locked on the tree lean as if daring the forest itself to come for him. Her wolf moved without thought. She was at his side in heartbeats, planting herself between him and anything that could reach him. Her body curved protectively, fur bristling, teeth bared at shadows. The bond thrummed so fiercely she could feel his pain in her own ribs, hot and sharp. Move, he growled, but it was weaker than his usual command. She didn't. Her wolf refused. And then, as if the night had been holding its breath, the world shifted. Not in the snow, not in the air, but inside her. The mark on her shoulder burned, not the steady hum she'd grown used to since the blood moon, but a pulse, sharp and erratic. Gold flared under her skin, then crimson, then gold again, as if the two colors were fighting for dominance. She staggered, the vision hitting hard and sudden. Two wolves, one black, one pale, locked in a circle of fire. Both bled. Both stood. And her voice, from somewhere in the vision, saying words she didn't remember speaking, one must fall for the crown to rise. She gasped, snapping back into the battle's aftermath. Her gaze darted to the Alpha, then to her fated mate still sprawled at the far end of the clearing, watching her through the haze of his own blood. The prophecy's meaning slammed into her with the force of a physical blow. One Alpha must die for her reign to begin. The air felt heavier now, the bond pulling tight, every heartbeat drumming the question into her bones. Which one? The Alpha gritted his teeth, trying to rise, but the blood soaking his side told her he didn't have long if he didn't get treated. Across the field, her fated mate struggled to his knees, his own wound bad but not mortal, not yet. His eyes stayed on her, sharp even in his weakness. Her wolf paced, torn between instincts. One wolf was hers by choice, the other by fate. One had claimed her under the blood oath, fought beside her, burned his mark into her skin. The other had been her first tether, her first bond, the one the moon had chosen before she knew the cost. The mark pulsed again, harder this time, the heat almost unbearable. She dropped to her knees beside the Alpha, her hands pressing against the wound even as his own covered hers. His breath came rough, the silver in his eyes still hard despite the pain. "You know what it means," he said quietly. She didn't answer. Couldn't. Lightning split the sky, close enough to shake the ground. Dawn was hours away, but the storm was rolling faster now, dark clouds bleeding into the red moonlight. Time was collapsing around her, shrinking every option to a single, brutal choice. Her gaze slid back to her fated mate. He wasn't moving toward her. He didn't need to. His stillness was its own challenge. Choose me, and I live. Choose him, and I don't. The prophecy's whisper returned, sharper this time, laced with something final. Before the sun touches the snow, only one will draw breath. The Alpha's hand tightened over hers, anchoring her. His scent cedar, smoke, wildfire, wrapped around her like a shield. Across the clearing, the scent she once thought was home barely stirred her wolf now. But the mark wouldn't stop pulsing between gold and crimson, as if it refused to commit before she did. Her wolf lifted her head, scanning the field, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes on her. The pack. The traitors. The rogues in retreat. All of them waiting to see who she would stand over when the sun broke the horizon. She closed her eyes against the wind, the snow, the blood. When they opened again, her decision was in them. And she had until dawn to make it real. You've followed her this far. You've felt every wound, every pull of the bond, every weight of choice. But tell me, if the prophecy demanded blood, could you choose which alpha to kill? Let me know in the comments. The storm broke before dawn. It came all at once, wind tearing through the tree-line, snow driven sideways in sheets, thunder splitting the night. The moon's red glow thinned under the churning clouds, but it was still there, bleeding faint light over the battlefield like the last witness to what was about to happen. She stood between them. The Alpha, still on one knee, blood seeping through his fingers, his silver eyes never leaving hers. Her fated mate, half risen, breathing ragged but steady enough to speak if he wanted. He didn't. He just watched her, calm in the way only someone certain of their victory could be. Her wolf felt every beat of the moment, the weight of the prophecy pressing in from all sides, the pack's silence stretched tight as a bowstring, the pulse in her mark still flickering between gold and crimson. It would stop when she chose. Her fated mate moved first, a slight shift of his shoulders, a tilt of his head. "You know where you belong." The words weren't loud, but they cut through the wind like a blade. Her wolf didn't so much as flick an ear toward him. The Alpha didn't speak at all. He didn't ask her to choose him. He didn't plead. He stood in his silence like it was its own kind of challenge, letting her see him as he was, bloodied, unbroken, dangerous, even on the edge of collapse. Her pulse slowed. Everything narrowed to two truths. One would live. One would die. She crossed the distance to the Alpha. The sound that came from her fated mate wasn't shock, it was rage, sharp and raw, enough to make the closest wolves bristle. But she didn't look back. She dropped to her knees beside the Alpha, one hand bracing against his shoulder, her body angled toward the pack. The bond flared like it had been waiting for her to stand here. The gold in her mark swelled, swallowing the crimson until it burned steady and bright, and for the first time, the light didn't fade. Her wolf lifted her head, and the pack moved. In that instant, it was decided, she wasn't just under his protection. She was beside him. Alpha Queen. The sound of it wasn't spoken aloud, but it moved through the wolves like a current. She could feel it settle into their bones, into hers, into the earth itself. And then, from the edge of the trees, movement. The storm bent the shadows into shapes that didn't belong to the wind. She caught the glint of eyes, too far to tell the color, but sharp enough to slice through the snow. A watcher. Not rogue. Not from either pack. Someone new. Someone patient. They didn't move closer. They didn't need to. They had seen what they came for. The Alpha's weight shifted under her hand. She looked down at him, his silver eyes locking with hers, and for a heartbeat, she saw her own reflection in them. Not gold. Not silver. Both. A sign. Or a warning. The watcher in the trees slipped back into the dark, gone without a sound. The wind dropped, just for a moment, and the battlefield felt suddenly too still. She knew it wasn't over, not the war, not the prophecy, not whatever had just watched her take her crown. Some stories end in blood. Hers? Hers was just beginning. If this story gripped your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Sophia's Werewolf Chronicles for more tales of love, betrayal, and fated wolves. Your next obsession is just one haul away.